generative AI and the entertainment sector, the industry's perspective. And we do have some very distinguished panelists with us here today on this podium. I'm very happy about that. I would just briefly introduce them to you, and then they will all have their initial statement, and from then on we take it on. First, I would like to start with introducing ANTIGONI PAPANIKOLAOU. She is the head of legal affairs for Microsoft Greece, Cyprus, and Malta. She holds a law degree from Aristoteles University and an LLM from the College of Europe. Her career spans roles at the European Commission, the European Court of First Instance, Papakonstantinou law offices, Coca-Cola Hellas, and Papastratos PMI. At Microsoft since 2012, she has held different leadership roles across legal and government affairs. And we are very happy to have you here.
Happy to be here as well. Thank you.
Then I would like to go on to Graham Davies, who is on the screen, I hope. Yes, you can see him. Graham is the president and CEO of DiMA, the Digital Media Association, representing the leading music streaming services. He has an extensive background in the music industry, working in digital transformation, policy, and advocacy. He advocates for the world's largest music streaming services, among them Spotify, and has testified to the UK House of Commons, US Senate, and Canadian House of Commons. Welcome to this conference, Graham. And it's a pity you can't be here because the venue is spectacular. You missed this one. Then next, I have to my right here, ALEXANDRU CALUGAR, is that correct? CALUGAR.
That's correct.
He is the head of legal of the Soul Group from Cyprus, Limassol. Welcome to this panel, ALEXANDRU. Thank you very much. And last but not least, GERARD ASSAYAG. You have already met Gerard yesterday in an extensive presentation, so I don't think I need to repeat everything that has been said about you. Everybody knows you already. He is, just for those, for you who haven't been here yesterday, he is from the IRCAM in France, which is a computer music laboratory founded by Pierre Boulez. And he's working on the man-machine cooperation in music, if I can say so. Now, I would like to invite Antigoni to start with your initial statement. Please, Antigoni, the floor is yours.
Thank you very much. Good morning, everyone. I'm really happy to be here and honored to be here with you. Very humble, being among such recognized creators and in such an interesting conference. Allow me first to share with you that what a nice way to start the day, having this music in the ears. And I cannot help but, there were so nice songs from composers, but I cannot help mentioning Manos Hadjidaki's music, whose birthday was yesterday, in fact. And it's so nice coincidence, to have your conference on that specific day. With that, I would like to share some few first thoughts around the use of AI in the creation sector. I think let me start by saying that the AI tool is a tool for innovation and creativity. And at Microsoft, we use the metaphor of Copilot because it works alongside you as an assistant, helping to be more innovative and more creative. Generative AI is being widely adopted across industries to help people to do more or to achieve more. I mean, let me quickly mention the health sector where surgeons are using AI to reduce operation time, and also in the drug industry, how much AI is helping new researchers to treat diseases and limits the time of research from years to weeks. But also, allow me to say that in the creative industry, AI is being used quite widely. I mean, let me mention that award-winning content was supported by AI, but not only by AI. Humans are the main creators here. Oscar-winning films like The Brutalist and Everything Everywhere All at Once used AI. And also musicians are using AI. I mean, there is a report I've recently read that a recent study found that almost 60% of artists use AI these days. Few examples like musician engineers databots use generative AI technique to create works across a range of genres with focus of heavy metal and funk music. And as they explain it, the technology creates hours of music from which they curate and edit beats into songs, but still human is in the center. And also, I found quite interesting another example that K-pop star MITDA used generative AI to simultaneously launch a new track in 6 different languages, which gives an option to the creators to open up new ways of enhancing the creation. And also quite interesting, Paul McCartney and Beatles, by using generative AI, machine learning, the mixing, managed to isolate John Lennon's vocal from noisy 70s demo. So that allowed the band to finish a new Beatle track, which I think is an act of preservation and creativity. Also, some data I would like to share with you is that I think that data are quite optimistic. They mentioned that revenues from global media and entertainment markets are projected to hit $3.4 trillion in 2028, with the industry looking towards AI to drive the revenue streams and transform business models. And the creative economy is one of the fastest growing sectors and could account for more than 10% of the global GDP by 2030, while the creative sector is projected to experience up to 40% growth by 2030, with an increase of 8 million jobs. But with every new wave of technology, new opportunities follow. History has showed that again and again, and each technological development has the potential to unlock new ways to engage audiences and drive new revenue streams. And let me give a bit of the example of 80s, when home video recorders didn't just change how we watch movies, we also seen the created a new entirely new home rental market. And in the digital areas, platforms like YouTube and TikTok have allowed new smaller creators and independent artists to reach a global audience that were once out of reach. And it seems that AI may create new business models and opportunities for partnership across different types of content. Also, allow me to give some examples that Microsoft also recently did partner with Samsung to enhance how people discover, interact with content, bringing AI-powered experiences into every device and increase access to new content. Also with Microsoft, for instance, partnered with Coldplay on a film for the future using AI and Copilot to let fans remix video clips and create personalized experience. And we are partnering with content creators to pay for access to restricted content, such as paywalled content, to develop AI models. And AI can increase the display of copyrighted content where licensing, for instance, is required. I mean, as an example, I will give that Microsoft Copilot Daily outputs current events using AI assistant, and the content used is licensed through negotiated arrangements with publishers. But on the other hand, as every technology raises some challenges regarding the regulatory frameworks, and we understand the right holders' concerns that they want to be able to manage their preferences about how their work are being used to train AI. And that's why we are building controls that give creators the control. And such controls were built on the standard, the responsible AI standard that Microsoft have introduced. It was the first company that talked about the need to create and develop such technologies, emerging technologies in a responsible way. And this standard is founded on basic 6 principles, which is fairness, that AI systems should treat all people equitably, its reliability and safety, that products, that models, AI must function consistent under varying conditions, privacy and security, which are essential, and that AI systems must comply with privacy standards and maintain robust security to prevent misuse. Inclusiveness, very important, that AI should empower everyone and be accessible to people of all abilities and backgrounds, reducing social inequalities rather than amplifying them, and avoiding biases of the current society. Transparency is very important. Users need to know when they are interacting with AI and understand the capabilities and the limitations. And last but not least, accountability, which is human. The essence is that human must remain in control of AI systems, and the clear oversight should ensure responsibility for decisions and outcomes that is remaining and rest with people. Based on that standard, we have developed certain tools. We have main tools available to right holders to manage how the works they publish online are collected and used for AI training using our Bing webmaster controls. And what is a webmaster? Is like an etiquette that gives in the web which sites can be used in full, restricted, or not at all. We are working together also with other AI developers and right holders to standardize tools to manage AI preferences at the Internet Engineering Task Force, and with the aim that the right holders can use one set of signals to manage their preferences for all AI developers. And we respect robust TXT, the signal for not crawl. What is that? Is like a standard, an internet standard. It's like a small text file for websites, which is used to tell search engines and other bots what they can look and what they cannot look. It's like, think it like a do not enter sign for certain parts of website. Also allow me to share that Microsoft does not train on works that are made available on pirate sites, and we do not collect and train on works behind paywalls unless we have an agreement to do so. Plus, I mean, the Bing Image Creator gives opportunities allowing the living artists to block use of their names in prompts. This can prevent prompts that request an image to be created in the style of an artist, for instance. And we do support legislation at the US to federalize the protection of the artist names, image, and likeness in digital replicas. And we are trying to have safeguards. We mitigate the risk of problematic outcomes from an AI product by enabling certain filters, controls. And one of these is the meta prompts. And allow me to explain what is a meta prompt. Is like, I will use a very simple expression, like playing a game and you tell a robot what to do a job. And a prompt is like the introduction that you give, like draw a cat, for instance, or tell me a joke. And the meta prompt is another type of instruction which gives to the robots more context to be to think before replying in a certain way, so to prevent potential consequential negative impacts. Also, we are applying block lists, and block lists, what are these? Is that the list of words that it's not good to use, like you say to your kids, not use that bad word. This is similarly applied as well. We are applying prompt transformation in order to avoid offensive wording, and also image filters. So to say that whether a picture should be used or not. We provide also our commercial customers a copyright commitment, which is a commitment to identify and engage of copyright infringements. And I think this is an encouragement for the responsible use of our products. And let me close with say that we strongly believe that AI is not replacing creativity, and I think that music industry, in the progress of all these years with the various technological advancements, we've seen that sort of resilience, and I have to say, I think because of the creativity and of the human creation, which cannot be replaced by machines. AI is here to just amplify this human creativity. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Antigoni, for your introductory words, and we'll come back to some of the points you've raised later. Now I would like to invite ALEXANDRU.
Thank you for this overview. It's quite interesting and comforting hearing all these controls put in place by Microsoft. I want to start with a very short story. I come from social media short content format, and it relates to music. Music is part of our production. I would like to share a story, maybe because we already went through a small, very fast cycle, and maybe music industry can take some learnings, or I can empower through the story some of the solutions moving forward. So we started the company 10 years ago with a very simple idea, what was called the content is king. So we were one of the first exclusive social media publishers. We produced full, let's say, production distribution cycle, expressly for platforms. So that meant script writers, video producers, designers, social media managers. We even have our own composers. So we streamlined this process, and it was some very good years at the beginning, right? But things, like in every technology, change very fast. So generative AI was only, let's say, the tip and the acceleration. But we noticed changing technology, right? So how we interact with tools. What before there were very large studios, now it can be done on a laptop or on a mobile. We used to have very expensive state-of-the-art cameras, so Sonys of thousands of euros. Now they're filmed on the mobile phone, right? And designers can edit the content and upload it already on the format, already optimized for the platforms. So it's a huge disruption. We grew a company with a lot of great performance, great specialists. But then one of the advantages or disadvantages was that we had access to large data sets. So we could see quite a few years back, the trends are changing. So regardless of the content, we were producing the same quality, the same volume or even more, but the performance was declining in revenue, declining in overall performance, let's say. The idea is that creator economy is changing. So large studios are competing with smaller studios. It's a mixed bag because the filters or the gatekeepers are removed, but then there is a saturation in the market, right? And I'm talking about short form content, and this is an essential, actually, differentiator, because as a large company, we had to evolve. Even if we streamlined some processes, we had to requalify, change roles that became automatic, and people were specialized in a field. They moved to more general productions, overviewing processes, and was very challenging. For some was exciting, for some was a very tough story. So technology, as every disruption, brings opportunities for some, but challenges for others. And I'm very grateful to be in this conference to share and to understand that music is going the same as other industries through the same challenges, and maybe we can work together, because for us we saw first script writers that were doing generic scripts, or let's say more for low production, and then written translators were impacted, and then we had voiceover, that it's a huge disruption in our industry. But I want to continue with actually there is a silver lining that, because we put a lot of effort into analytics teams to understand where is the trend going. As a business, it's a very binary, you either adapt or you die. It's no way to choose in between, right? So what we understood is that even if generic content is decaying as performance due to saturation, due to different dynamics, the actual creator economy, so the generic content is declining, but the creator economy is growing. And what we used to say that content is king, but in a world that is saturated, we understand that the real stars are actually the creators, the musicians, the writers, the performers, the producers. They are the ones that they're cutting through the noise, shaping the culture. And yes, generative AI, it's a cheap solution, but in the spotlight, it's actually the human spark. This is the content that it's performing, and it has a lasting value compared to the generic one. So this was our findings, and since our company, we are pivoting towards creator-centric economy for the last couple of years, and actually this is how we managed to put the company back on track and actually grow even bigger than before. So, regarding generative AI, there is content in all industries, and that will be created by machines. This is already, the threshold is changing. Now, for the timing, because I heard that many times that maybe we are behind the train. Well, in technology, we always build a train after it leaves the station. So I think that actually we are in a good timing, because the proof of concept was made by the language models, but we are in the middle of the race. We forget that Microsoft with Copilot, Gemini, Grok from Twitter and so on, they're competing. We are now deciding on who will be, or which will be the top models. And technology, yeah, it's a differentiator, but they're all starting to catch up to the same threshold. And I believe the differentiator will be actually the users, will be the stakeholders and the creators that will decide which platforms they would choose. And then there is an actual veto right or power to influence and bring on board the ones that want to align with certain values. And being in a competition is very important, because then if X doesn't want, the other platform can join. So it says, fine, it's maybe Google doesn't want to have certain mechanisms of compensation, but maybe that's appealing for Copilot, for Microsoft, or for another new creative or another technology platform. And one last part, which is, we discussed a lot about black box, about transparency. I think it's a very hard topic. Even with us, we have some algorithm, and it's very hard to understand once the mix was made. So I would take more of a publisher approach or distribution approach, and this method is for decades. It's already implemented on YouTube, on Content ID, on Facebook with Rights Manager. basically, I would take the stand that I really don't care how it was created. I will work on the assumption that it used everything without permission or with permission. But then, if the output is matching with certain content, then it should pay these royalties. It's the same mechanism that it's implemented now, or it's on YouTube, on other social media, and it's implemented at scale and it works. So I think there are solutions, you just have to look at the design and try to push the platforms to go in that direction. So yeah, thank you, and this is...
Thank you, Alexandru. And now I would like to move to Graham.
Thank you very much for the opportunity to participate in the conference today. Sorry, I've been unable to be there in person. So DiMA is the voice of music streaming, and we promote and protect the ability of music fans to legally engage with creative content whenever and wherever they want it, and for artists to more easily reach long-time fans and make new ones. The importance of creativity and innovation to society has been recognised from our earliest days, and exposure to diverse creative works and an ever-evolving set of tools has been the basis of the great music of the past, and AI is the latest tool. We've seen remarkable uses of its technology by artists as diverse as Grimes, Randy Travis, and, as already mentioned, the Beatles. So the pace of development and utilization of AI, and particularly generative AI, with the capability to mimic creators and their work, does raise important questions around attribution of human artistry, artistic integrity, consent, freedom of expression, and creators and performers' ability to make a living. So it is a challenge to balance these at times competing issues, as access to powerful new generative tools is becoming ubiquitous. Though instances of AI-driven impersonation in the music marketplace have still not achieved great prominence, but we are, of course, responsive to the concerns raised by creators. So one area that we are actively advocating is for effective controls around digital replicas, so that our members can continue to provide listeners with compelling experiences based on content they can trust. We believe in empowering consumers with genuine music experiences, and our members have nothing to gain from deceptive music in the supply chain. Those who would falsely capitalize on the creative identity and expression of the artists their customers love should be held accountable. We therefore believe there should be appropriate safeguards to protect an individual's personhood, whether that's name, image, likeness, voice in this context. There is a way to hold bad actors accountable while also preserving a supportive ecosystem for artists, fans, and digital music services alike. So one key aspect is ensuring that the good guys are not saddled with liability for the actions of others. So legislating around emerging technology is always difficult. Technology and governments rarely move at the same pace, but we are working hard right now with industry colleagues on the No Fakes bill in the US Congress to bring about legislation that can achieve a positive framework for the removal of unauthorized digital replicas. But balancing free speech in this area is a challenge and a particular area of focus. Fortunately, the music industry is equipped to respond quickly to the need for change, and commonly does. The music streaming success story has been built on strong partnerships between DiMA's members and the music rights holders, who work together to enable the complex process of global distribution of more than 100 million digital assets and removing offending content to take place. Recent developments which are happening by the day, YouTube updating its partner program policies earlier this year to combat repetitious and inauthentic content, and Spotify recently confirmed their removal of over 75 million tracks considered to be spam and spam that is largely AI facilitated. And this brings me to the important topic that a well-functioning digital supply chain is dependent on the quality of the data. And it's another area where DiMA's members have sought to work closely across the industry. We sponsored the Credit Stew initiative in 2021 to raise awareness of the need for recordings to carry minimum metadata and identifiers. This campaign is important to our members because they sit at the end of a long and complex supply chain. Comprehensive and robust song metadata is important for music fans who want to delve deeper into engagement and discovery. It's important for artists and songwriters to gain deserved recognition, and it's vital if there's to be timely and effective royalty payment. Credit Stew was started before the prominence of AI content, but it's just as relevant in this new context. Listeners want more information about what they're listening to and the role of AI technology in the music they stream. And for artists who are responsibly using AI tools in the creation processes, there's currently no way on streaming services for them to share if and how they're using AI. So we think that AI tools are increasingly a spectrum, not binary, where artists and producers may choose to use AI to help with some parts of their productions and not others. The industry needs a more nuanced approach to AI transparency, not to be focused to classify either a song as with AI or not AI. This is relevant to whether recordings and works enjoy copyright. In the US, the Copyright Office has given guidance that there is no copyright in a work entirely of AI origin, but there is copyright in works that use AI in conjunction with human authorship. So more advanced labeling is also relevant to whether a song or artist will receive award recognition. The Recording Academy says that a work must have meaningful human authorship if it's to be eligible for a Grammy. Work is underway to establish industry standards and to ensure listeners can understand what's behind music they stream. But just as with the other standards in place for other aspects of music metadata, we need effective processes across the industry if the standards are to be effective. The disruption brought about by streaming has thus far taken 25 years, but based on the current trajectory, I think it's likely the disruption from AI will come much more quickly. And in that context, industry cooperation to manage this change will be important. And thank you to APOLLON and FIM for advancing this debate.
Thank you very much, Graham. And now, last but not least, of course, Gerard, the floor is yours.
Thank you. Good morning, everybody. So I'm a musician and a researcher working in a public institutional research center called the IRCAM, which is a center for music creation and music research. It's not big. I mean, in the research part, in the research department, we are like maybe 40 to 50 permanent people, and with all the students, master students and PhD students, maybe around 100. So it's a very little structure compared to the industry perspective. And yet, IRCAM could be the biggest music research center in the world, because these structures tends to be very little. There are a few in France, there are a few in Europe, there are some in the US and in Asia and other continents. Maybe in the world, like a few dozen of them, and some are small as 4 to 5 people, and usually it could be something like anything from 10 to 20, 25 people. So how are these relevant to the current panel, which is the industry perspective? Especially in this kind of center, and especially IRCAM, we're concerned with what is called, in France we call it musique contemporaine, contemporary music, which is new music, new creation that tries to set free from tradition and the weight of tradition, and try to find new ways in sound structures and music. So electronic music, electroacoustic music, or hybrid music, where you have both the orchestra, the acoustic instruments, and the electronic and the computer. So these are not mainstream. These are these are niche creations, artistic realms. And as you could see yesterday, for instance, the performance that I gave, maybe some of you liked it, maybe some of you hated it, but it was not mainstream. It was not a song, it was not a pop song, it was not a hip-hop song, it was not a jazz standard, it was not a classical quartet of folk music. So, speaking too fast, or they're translating. Good luck. Yeah. So again, how is this relevant to our current discussion and the industry's perspective? Well, the fact is, in these places, the kind of the way music is envisioned is at its highest novelty and complexity, in a way, whether we like it or not. But this is how it is envisioned. And when we are trying to model with scientific means and technological means this kind of human expression and phenomenon at its highest richness and complexity, then we're doing a great job for general modeling of sound structures and music. And the technology we come up with can then be easily generalized and used by everybody in any kind of music and eventually make their way to the industry. So there are great examples. At IRCAM, we were collaborating years ago with a great figure, John Chowning. Maybe some of you know this name. John was a composer and collaborating with IRCAM in the 80s, then got back to Stanford in his own music creation and research center, the Karma at Stanford University, very small structure. And just for the purpose of his music and his composition, he invented the idea of frequency modulation synthesis, FM synthesis, and wrote a paper about it. And then Yamaha Corporation found the paper and was very interested and got into a deal with Stanford, and they licensed the technology, and Yamaha put it in the DX7 synthesizer, and they sold dozens of millions of pieces of this synthesizer. And many people around the world created any kind of music using this synthesizer in the 80s and 90s and so on. So of course this is an exceptional example, but there are many examples. So for instance, the technology I showed yesterday, if you remember, I talked about the idea of co-creativity, which means I'm not specifically interested in what the machine produces as far as creativity is concerned, nor what the musician is producing as far as creativity is concerned. As a researcher, I'm interested in the complex system that is made by the interaction between the agents and between, for instance, the musician and the machines. But also it could be between musicians or between machines. I'm interested in the interaction phenomenon as a complex system. And it is a complex system because you have a double crossed feedback between the agents, because both agents listen to the other, learn from the other, and produce new material. But listening and learning and producing is both ways, so it's exponentially evolving like a complex system. So it produces things that are unpredictable, that are rich, and that can have artistic value. So this is my approach my research approach to the system, and this is what we try to implement in the system that you saw yesterday. This work that you saw yesterday is the work by maybe 2-3 persons during maybe 2-3 years. And how can you compare this with the industrial research, for instance, in the big tech, for instance, at Google, where they could invest dozens or maybe hundreds of man-year work power, and also huge technological hardware infrastructure, huge farms of GPUs, etc. Whereas at IRCAM we have 6, in my team we have 6 GPUs that you can buy in a store for video games, you see. And we're achieving a very interesting and groundbreaking result because we are totally free. from the industrial constraint, from the mainstream commercial constraint, and we are addressing problems that are general and universal problems. How does a complex being, like a human being, interact with a complex system like a computer equipped with algorithms and AI? And eventually, these ideas will make their way to the market. So for instance, I had a PhD student, Antoine Caillon, who was working in my team 2 years ago. And then Antoine finished his studies and then moved in the real world and went to Google. And I just learned that Google is now issuing a new technology where they pretend that they can have real-time interaction. So they have AI and machine learning, and they say that now the system, and it's big news, it's breaking news, now the system is able to interact in real time with musicians and improvise. So up to then, what I was doing, this thing you saw yesterday, was kind of a niche, you know, free improvisation, real time, etc. The big tech was not interested in that, was interested in generative systems. So how do you generate a new song or a new piece or movie music, something that has a value on the market. But now Google is interested by that, and of course Antoine, who studied in IRCAM and was totally in this spirit of free research, brought all these ideas to Google, and now they're issuing. So if you compare, it was 30 engineers with Antoine as a lead researcher during 2 years, so that's 60 man years, and of course huge machines, infrastructures, compared to 2-3 people and a few GPUs. And of course, if they continue in that direction, probably the system will become much more powerful than what you saw yesterday. But it's not a problem. I'm very glad, because what we do is open research, it's open source, and it's very important. Google released this new technology as open source. So they absolutely understood the value of open research, because they benefit from open research. And the good thing is that they restitute it in a way, because what they do, they provide it as open source. So this will, in return, feed institutional, public, and free research. And just to finish on this, I'm glad that they did this. Maybe they are already beyond me, but in a way, I'm already beyond them, because I'm already beyond what I showed yesterday. Of course, research-wise, I'm trying now to do new things. So what I presented was a European project, REACH, ERC, European Research Council project, that is finishing this year, and I'm trying to set a new European project on something that I call interaction learning. So previous project was on the idea of co-creativity, cross-feedback between agents making a complex system. And now it's interaction learning, just a short word. Massively, industrial research and industrial developments and the AI that industries makes available to customers is based on representation learning. So ChatGPT, the transformers technology, the diffusion technology, analyze big amounts of data, which are big amounts of content, and they are able to generate new content. So it's totally content-based, and this is why it's called representation learning. But music is not only content and representation. Music is action. And as you understood yesterday, I'm pretty much involved in live music, and music as a living phenomenon. And so, for instance, when musicians are interacting together, whether they are improvising or like the quatuor, the quartet that you saw this morning, whether they are playing a score, they also have their own expressivity. They take decision. And these decisions are actions, and they communicate between them using the sonic media to communicate their decision. And this is not modeled by the current AI system. Current AI system are all related to language. Even they are handling music, they are using language prompts, and they are handling latent space, where what they model is the connection, the relation between sonic and musical information and linguistic information. Okay, this is fine, it was a big progress, but it is a limitation, because music is language, but it is also action. So interaction learning is going to model the connection between content and action. That is, in improvisation, content is, okay, you generate sound and phrases and notes and blah, blah, blah. But at some point you take an action. For instance, the agent could decide to play against the other agent in order to introduce a break, maybe, in the piece that is at play. And this is what you mentioned in the elevator, where the discussion saying we should be proactive. So this is how the system could become proactive. So maybe this will influence in 2-3 years Google and the other people in the high tech, and maybe this will make its way to the industry. So, and this is how things will move on in the future.
Thank you very much, Gerard, and thank you for not taking more time. Because our time is really limited here. Now, you mentioned this new open source project of Google. Now, not everything is open source, and this is a panel about the industry's perspective. It's a panel about business as well. And I would like to ask Antigoni, how is Microsoft making money with AI or planning to make money with AI?
In general, you mean? I mean,
in general.
Yeah, with
Also.
Copilot, we have Azure OpenAI. These are the commercial offerings. But allow me a bit to comment about the AI models. I think you mentioned, it was mentioned that the AI models, what they are seeing is like seeing the patterns and the concepts. So they are trying to reasoning in a way of meaning the human reasoning to an extent. So it's not like they are like a copy-paste machines. So they are giving the base, and then through the action you mentioned and the inputs, then you have a certain output. So through the outputs, this is the way that there is an interaction. But in general, Microsoft is, as I mentioned before, it's supporting the responsible development of AI, which understands the concerns. And as in the past, and allow me also to say that Microsoft understands the concerns because it is an IP holder as well on its own. It's opening to discuss and partner with the relevant stakeholders. Let me reference also the EU AI Act and the Code of Conduct that it was signed, and with the relevant stakeholders, like I mentioned, the Internet Experts Task Force is trying to develop protocols and models on how to address more effectively this type of challenges that the new technology and within the specific regulatory framework poses.
Thank you. Now, Alexandru, you mentioned that you're in the business of short content. And we had a talk yesterday, and you said it's like 30-second video clips helping artists, musicians to promote their work. What do you think will be the effect of such a development where you actually are creating a music format that is only 30 seconds long? What do you think that will, what kind of effect will that have on the art form of music?
Yeah, so it's not only 30 seconds, sometimes it's a few minutes or a short series. It's not necessarily about the length, but it's about the quality or the creativity attached to it. So I think generic music or background music, the same as generic videos or imagery, will be displaced by generative AI, while even short but creative music. And when I say creative, I'm referring to the human component. I'm not referring to just a new generation that it's somehow unique from the past generations. So I think length, just because we were on a social media and working with high volume, we saw this impact first, but I believe it's about making this labeling, differentiating between creators and high, let's say, content with high creator input and generic background content. And I don't know if it's to extend to another topic, but was discussed during this panel about labeling, and I think this is a very interesting path to explore, because labeling is done in the video content for decades. Some it's for age restriction, but now, for example, in the industry of social media, we have MFK, made for kids. So we are labeling content that is targeting kids, and it's effective. It's different monetization systems, it's different distribution models. So maybe labels like human generated with minimum adjustments to medium, or completely generated by models, will be able to separate distribution models, the way they're monetized, and so on. As an idea.
It's an interesting path to follow, and I'm sure there will be initiatives eventually, like like the biological food movement and things like that, and labels that actually in the end consumers were willing to pay more for a product that they thought was appropriate. I hope Graham is still with us. Yes, okay, wonderful. I just didn't see you, sorry, because this screen is always changing. So I have a question for you. Yeah, we know that we had the news from Deezer in September that they said they have discovered that 28% of the tracks uploaded are AI generated, and you have mentioned the removal of what you call spam on Spotify also this year. Now, what I'm wondering, do you think that any of the platforms are developing their own models in order to be less dependent on other content?
I don't know that specifically. In relation to DiMA, we represent our members much more sort of downstream in terms of the content that's coming up onto their platforms. I think that the issue of, as I say, sort of having non-deceptive content and content on the platforms, which is what consumers want, is the primary concern of our members. And I think that the issue of volumes of spam content is a challenge that we're kind of seeing all of our members putting in place, increasingly systems to try to handle it, because I think that while there are hundreds of millions of works now and hundreds of thousands of them being uploaded a week, the ability for that scale of content to continue to grow is obviously facilitated by AI. AI is an ability to really kind of amplify the volumes of content. So hence, alongside that, our members are definitely having to kind of look at their policies and look at the systems for kind of seeing what's coming in. And it's not just for our members. It's an issue that's a load on the whole music industry. I'm on the board of the Mechanical Licensing Collective, which is a collective rights administrator in the US, for instance, and they similarly have to have policies to try to kind of see where, at the moment, it's largely based on high volume interactions with their organizations, which kind of give rise to a concern that it is GenAI generated registrations of works, for instance. So it's definitely, I think that in terms of that Deezer stat, I'm sure they're right. I think the challenge you have is, as we've just heard on the panel, is that what is classified as AI, because AI can be used a bit in the production process, or it can be used a lot. And so the other challenge that I have heard from creators is that their recordings can be taken down that are legitimate human originated recordings using AI as a tool, could get caught by the systems and the filtering, which is seeking to reduce down the AI spam. So I think we're at the early stages, obviously, in terms of the adoption of AI, the labeling of AI, and also the controlling of spam, however you kind of define that.
Thank you very much. I think, to be honest with you, we've only got 13 and a half minutes left. I think it's time to open the floor to questions from the audience.
Yeah, I alluded to this yesterday. Do the panel think that there is a moral requisite to ensure that when AI music is put into the sort of public sphere, it should be labelled as AI? And I'm talking about not music where creators have used AI to create music, as we saw yesterday so effectively from Steve and from our friend here. I'm talking about purely generated AI music. I believe that the public has a right to know that it is AI music. If I'm walking around a supermarket and the supermarket is using AI music, there should be a sign up somewhere that says the music that we use here is purely created by AI, not by human beings. I think the public should know. The MU in the UK has run effective campaigns against the use of recorded music in various public spheres, and I think there will be a need for a similar campaign against the use of AI music, unless, of course, that AI music is labelled every time it's used.
Thank you, Horace. Who would like to respond?
From my side, I already voted for labeling. I think it's not just a moral, but even from technical and commercial aspects, it should be a transparent labeling. I don't know if it should be a poster or how it should be approached, but I'm full on for transparency and consumers having the choice and being informed.
And I think also I've mentioned that one of the principles of responsible AI standard of Microsoft is transparency. And exactly that is about that people should know when interacting with AI. And if I'm not wrong, also under the EU AI Act and the Code of Conduct attached to it and signed by various relevant stakeholders, there is a reference about the transparency. And even now, if you see when you're interacting with various AI models and tools, there is a reference, at least Microsoft, which says that when an output is generated, it is AI generated. It's the human who needs to place the creativity. I mean, the copyright also notion, if I'm not wrong, is protecting the creative expression of ideas.
Maybe one day we will have to label human music as human, brought to you by a human. We're not yet there, hopefully.
Yeah. Okay. I see there's many hands up now, so yeah, he didn't raise his. Would you like to comment on this, Graham?
Yeah, I actually the last comment about if there's a label for, and I think, and sorry, I'm not with you, Horace. Would love to kind of discuss this more. I've heard over the last week, should there be a label that is indicating it is almost entirely human content that hasn't used any AI tool or input. So I think from our members' perspective, as I've kind of already said in my remarks, that we care deeply about the consumer, just as Horace has said, and the consumer already is craving more information on who's involved on recordings. So I think from our perspective, I know that my members are working closely with, there's a industry organization called DDEX, which tends to be the standards authority for the metadata that sits with the recordings as they come up onto the streaming services. So I feel, have felt for many years very passionate about metadata as being, if you're kind of rubbish in or you're missing data on the in, it's almost impossible to kind of do anything on the output. And our members sit at the end of that chain. So I think to Horace's point, I think it's a key issue for our industry right now.
Thank you. Next one will be Laurent Darid.
Thank you. I would like to ask our panelists what can you observe now about the test of the public for AI generated content? Do you have some figures? You know, especially in the platforms. Because what's the situation now? And I'd like to ask you as well is it a shared idea that we must all stimulate human artistry? And how can we make it? How can we make it? Because the labeling contents, it's the good things. It's okay, but is it enough? Is it enough? And what can we try to do to have other stimulation in terms of marketing and so on? That's my question.
I can start very short. I think was part of my introduction that actually this was the pivot moment in our overall analysis, that generic content, faceless content, it's underperforming, is declining. There was a huge push when everybody jumped on the hype of social media, but what is increasingly in performance and growth is unique unique content that has a creator behind it, that has a story, that has a composer. Because people do want to relate to creators. They want to relate with people when they want to understand their story. And of course, for the genre, as I mentioned, like background, salon music, sometimes it will be AI, but you cannot replace the classics. So this is in terms of trends. While in terms of stimulating content, I'm not aware exactly about concrete practices, but in general, the thresholds are very low now. So you can start basically, I don't know, composing, creating, and publishing in one day without any gatekeepers. So there are more services for the creators to access global audience. There are payment services, then we can get paid. I know, you are in some corner of the world and you are accessing US market and get paid. Of course, there are challenges, but the gatekeepers really, and these thresholds really went low. So there is a great opportunities for creators, my view.
Maybe, if it's okay with you, we'll move to another question. Over there, yes, please.
Yes, so thank you very much. I'm Marc Dumoulin from EXA, the European Composer and Songwriter Alliance. I take what the lady from Microsoft has said about transparency is very important. Just that when we were working on the EU AI Act, we saw that for Microsoft, also trade secrets were kind of very important. So where do you draw the line between transparency and trade secrets? And when you say transparency is very important, does that also include transparency on the data used by Microsoft for AI training? Thank you very much.
Yes, thank you for the question. Trade secrets set, I think, a different industrial rights. It's a different, covered by different regulatory framework. So copyright is something different, as I mentioned, and I'm coming back to the training of data. As I think Graham mentioned, the AI models need a vast variety of data to be trained, and at least I can talk about Microsoft. Microsoft is training the models based and within the framework of the copyright law, within the limitations and the exception that this provides. So I hope I answered. I mean, the European Copyright Directive gives certain exceptions, like the data mining, for exactly that reason, for helping the innovation. This is something that also the European Commission underscored. And this is within the limitation of fair use. That being said, as mentioned before, Microsoft at least is respecting and not using data which are paywalled. These are under piracy, and also, as gave the example previously, in case of certain data that are excluded, then it gets into special arrangements like the use of AI tool I've mentioned before with the data owners. I hope I answered your question, sir. Happy to take that offline.
Thank you.
I just have a very mini pre-coffee question. On the subject of labeling that was brought up, I was just wondering if we have created pieces of music, et cetera, that are partially AI, that are 60%, 80%, 90%, how would labeling work? Because you'll have a creator that has used a little bit, and I was just wondering, you know, the analogies to the food industry, you know, it reminds me of, does it have gluten? Does it not have gluten? You know, what kind of stickers could we possibly put on it? And if this would work, is it a good idea to move forward with this labeling? Just a small question. Thank you.
I see that Graham was nodding while you were asking your questions. Would you like to answer?
Yeah, so I think it's a great question. And I don't think we all have the answer right now. As I say, I think the challenge you can have is that the more that, I mean, AI has been used as a tool in the music studio for many, many years. So what do we mean by, and I think Horace has a clear view of what he deems to be, you know, an AI work or an AI recording. But, you know, there could be many, many definitions of what, and as you say, sort of gradations of the extent of human input or AI input. There's also an issue as to whether artists and creators will want to be upfront about that. And then there is then the question, which was raised earlier, as to whether the consumer cares. I think fans lean in and go deep and want to know whether Randy Travis's latest song was actually sung by him, which it wasn't. But that information actually isn't labeled on the streaming services if you go and play that recording. So I think some fans really care and will care. And maybe there's a point here of education, which again was perhaps behind Horace's point as to maybe there's a big education piece as to why people should care about the extent of human input to a work. But I don't think we as an industry yet have answers to that question you just posed.
So food for thought for better solutions in the future. Now we are already in overtime. I would like to remind the audience that there will be a quite long exchange session this evening before the closing of this conference. Again, if you have further questions or further interventions for all the panels and all the interventions that will happen today, the whole AI section basically. So for now, we have to close the list of questions, and I would like to ask the panelists to give us a very, very short final wrap-up, maybe 30 seconds, is that possible?
Yeah, very short
Please.
sentence. So we've been talking about the industry perspective and the profits, but mostly talking about the current profits. But industry is also interested in the future profits, and the future profits are based on research. And in that perspective, open source is very important, and Google understood it, because do you think they really paid 60 man years of development for the last released open source system just by philanthropy? And do you think that Microsoft bought GitHub out of philanthropy? They absolutely understand that there are ecosystems going from public research to private research and back, and this conditions the future result, and this conditions the future profits. So I think research and open source are super important and relevant to that debate.
Thank you. Antigoni?
Yes. Two works. I think strong partnerships in the development of the technological progress and the advancements. I think the learning from the history and especially music industry, the partnerships and the continuous discussion among all the stakeholders, I think, help address challenges and see new things. Plus, it's the collaboration between the creation and innovation which needs to go hand in hand, I think. Thank you.
Thank you. Alexandru?
Yes, and to build on Antigoni's about collaboration, you know, there is a old saying in our industry, when we look at production, global production, it was saying design in US, produced in China and regulated in Europe. In Europe, we had always this stigma that we tend to overregulate. Well, now we are in the midst of the technology, so probably we should focus on design and on collaboration. And there is no better conference to build designs and more informed than as this one. There is no way politicians will know how to label the music industry. And there is no good part. It's like in technology. You build a label, doesn't work. You build another one, you build another, you create iteration. So focus on design and focus on the community, because this is where the answers are coming.
Thank you. Graham?
I think my summary would be AI is moving incredibly quickly. There are opportunities, I think, for new connections between artists and fans. I think that there are opportunities for more people to be artists than ever before. And I think there's opportunities for new revenue models. But of course, there's challenges around volumes, labeling, and changing economics. But I would come back to how you started the conference today with that wonderful music from living human beings creating music that has intrinsic value and always will.
Thank you very much. And I would really like to thank all the panelists here online and on site. And I would ask you to give them a big hand. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.